So let's start with pensions. Obviously, the special session ended without an agreement, and now you guys have formed a new work group that's going to be looking into it and coming up with a recommendation to present in February, hopefully, unless the co-chairs decide otherwise. Right. So tell me about the new work group and what you want the goal of it to be, and if you think there's going to be some kind of passage of a pension legislation this session.
You know, our dynamics changed dramatically when we began this session. When we got called into special session, we had all the same players in place. We had people that had a pretty good understanding of the pension issue, of the pension bill that we had passed. They had spent several months explaining that vote, justifying that vote to their constituents at home. And I think they had a real comfort level with passing that legislation. They had justified it. They'd been tried by the jury of the voters, and they were returned here. I think they felt comfortable in doing that. When we couldn't come to a quick resolution on exactly what that legislation was look like, it became apparent that we did need to go home and kind of regroup. But as we regrouped, our dynamics changed. We welcomed 32 new members into this body. Nearly a third of the body are new. And while they've certainly been exposed to the rhetoric, while they've certainly been exposed to the debate and the controversy around the pension issue, many of them have never actually been exposed to the facts surrounding the pension issue. And I think that at that point in time, we owed it to our members to give them that full understanding, to give them that full education. And we also owed it to our members that had asked for different things to be reconsidered from the other pension bill. We owed it to them to be able to voice their concerns and their issues and just kind of hit the reset button and start from scratch. And I do ultimately believe it will produce a piece of legislation that we can pass out of the chamber and the Senate as well, and be signed by the governor. But we're not putting a deadline on that. You know, it will be ready when it is ready. And I know it's always easy to, when you get into session, it's easy to back yourself up against the clock. That's why we wanted to go ahead and start as soon as we came into session, basically, and the very week that we go into recess, to go ahead and start that process. We don't want anybody to feel like they're being rushed through it, but at the same time, we don't want this to just sit there and continue to hang over an entire session or an entire body like it has in the past.
Right, and they just had their first meeting yesterday, actually, and they rehashed a lot of stuff we've been talking about for 10 years, and he even talked about, the LRC staff talked about the fact that we've had lots of different groups like this, yes, sort of, and different studies over the last 10 years or so. And you know, it is helping kind of inform some of these people, but you also said at Chamber Day, like you just kind of referenced, that there may not be a vote on this.
It's possible. It's not my hope. It's not my desire. It's not my plan. But at the same time, we have to be reasonable. We have to understand the facts that surround this, and this remains one of the, if not the most controversial and difficult and divisive issues that we will face. And I think to ignore those facts is leading us down the path of failure to begin with. So if we acknowledge those facts up front and say, look, we understand that this is going to be controversial. We understand this is going to be difficult. We understand that this is going to cause a lot of strife, a lot of arguments. A lot of people are going to, fall into and out of friendships over this, just like they have in the past. And unless we acknowledge that those things are going to happen, then you're bound to end up with those things continuing to rip us apart. And so let's go ahead and act like adults, and let's address this in an adult-like manner that we would address any other problems.
And in that same vein, are you guys going to be inviting other people to come in and give testimony or present in front of the group to kind of get an input from some of these other groups that may feel like they haven't been heard yet?
Yes, I think that there will be some of that, and part of that is going to be up to the co-chairs and, right, and the body itself. I don't think that we can turn this into open mic night. There are 300,000, I believe, state employees or state retirees right now, and certainly while we want them to be heard en masse, I don't think we can't let every single person that wants to talk on the issue talk on the issue. But to the extent that these groups should have their voices heard, that they should be able to present logical information, I think that we have to do that.
And I think Senator McDaniel made an interesting point. You know, if you brought all the stakeholders for every part of the budget, and you'd have a lot of voices in the room. So it isn't done in a vacuum, and it'll be
Sure.
an interesting group that you guys have going on.
Sure.
So let's talk about another new group. In the first week of session, the House had to focus on an election that was decided by one vote over in Owensboro. So tell me about that committee. I know a lot of people were interested in the way that it was picked. I know that's how it's supposed to be done, but tell me about that new group, what the timeline looks like for that, and any update we have on that group.
Frankly, I have no update on it. I have allowed them to work in the manner under which they set up under the rules that were adopted from the beginning. And it was an issue that left all of us scratching our head a little bit on, because most of the things that we do here in Frankfort, especially in chambers, have some type of recent precedent behind them, and there hasn't been on this issue. So we have a relatively vaguely written law that says you absolutely have to do this, but it doesn't really give you the details on how you do it. It just says you have to do it. The Constitution is pretty clear that we have to do it, and we felt like, despite some of the other assertions to the contrary, that we really didn't have a choice but to take this up. It was a validly filed contest, and we don't have any choice but to take it up. And the direction that the statute gave us was that it shall be a blind draw of 5 to 9 members, and it shall be from all eligible members of the body. And so that's what we did. We adopted rules. We brought in Dr. Paul Salamanca from the University of Kentucky College of Law, who's probably the foremost constitutional law expert in the Commonwealth. Asked him to consult with us on how to do it, to make sure that we were doing it right. The one thing, we can't control a lot of the political dialogue that goes on and swirls around, but the one thing we can control is how we conduct ourselves. And I had that conversation with Leader Atkins early on when we first started talking about it, and none of us excited about doing it, obviously, but as my challenge to him, and he responded in a very positive manner, was that the only thing we can control is how we conduct ourselves during this. And we have to make sure that we are conducting ourselves in a manner that we can legitimately look at our members at the end of the day and say, we did this right. And we're not asking you to be excited about the fact that we did it, but we did it right. And I think that we have. And again, the board has been meeting. I've not really gotten an update from them, simply because I don't really want I don't want to have the appearance of in any way, shape, or form of anybody trying to influence this. They are doing their work. Chairman Petrie is an outstanding member, and I'm certain will do a good job in managing that. And I expect that these are quality individuals, all 9 of them that have been appointed to this or been selected for it, and I think that generally the people of the Commonwealth need to feel good about the way this process is being conducted. Again, I know that people are not necessarily happy that it's being conducted. I understand the political realities of that, but I think that at the end of the day, we can all look at each other and say we did this right.
So now, meanwhile, in the Senate, the first week of session, they passed a couple education bills, tribunal reform, principal selection, a couple big issues that they've already passed on the floor. So now it'll come over to you guys in February for consideration. Do you think that the House will have the same appetite to pass those bills?
I think there's going to be a healthy debate about them. As you know, we're a little bit different body than the Senate is. First of all, we have a lot more members, a lot more new members that aren't necessarily going to be up to speed on a lot of issues that they can act on very quickly because they've discussed and debated them for years. But we will absolutely have a vigorous debate on them. I feel like that everybody on the Education Committee is approaching them with an open mind and eager. There are discussions going on with the education groups to try to find something that everybody can feel good about, and I think that they will certainly be given the priority that they deserve.
So the committee makeup this time is interesting because there's actually quite a few teachers on the education committee. So do you think that that committee will be able to pass some of the priorities, the education priorities you guys have been talking about for quite some time now? Do you think they'll have the appetite to do some of these reforms?
I do. I think, yes, there are several teachers on there and several educators from differing backgrounds. And I think that we were very conscious of what we were doing when we did it, and we felt like that these are items that deserve significant debate in committee, and we will deal with them as a whole on the floor when we actually vote on them. But I think they do deserve considerable and vigorous debate in committee.